4 months after my brother Sean's death, I had enough courage to flip through his cell phone. I came across some audio files. There were 7 in total, each one day apart. 2 dated the 21st of December, 2021, where Sean had described their arrival and their day in general, and the second one late that night. The 22nd of December also had 2 recordings, and so did the 23rd of December. The 24th of December had 1 recording only. I clicked play and listened to them. They were snippets of Sean and his wife Claire's days, as well as the nightly recordings that were quite intense. I have taken those recordings and filled in the blanks as best I could. Here is Sean's story. Christmas Day in a secluded log cabin is supposed to be magical. A crackling fire, the warm scent of pine and cinnamon, and the quiet hush of snow blanketing the woods. That's what I thought I'd get when I rented this cabin for Claire and me. A romantic retreat, miles from the chaos of the city and far from prying eyes. Just me and Claire. No noise, no stress, just us. We wanted something special, something romantic. Instead, I got something else entirely. It started the day we arrived. The snow was falling in delicate flakes covering the ground in a white blanket. The cabin was perfect, rustic but cozy, with a fireplace and thick wooden beams. After unloading the car and setting up inside, Claire laughed as she saw the mistletoe hanging above the doorway. I drew her closer, and we kissed beneath it, feeling like we were the only 2 people in the world. For a fleeting moment, everything was perfect, until that first night. The wind howled outside, roaring through the trees, rattling the windows. I woke up at some point, I don't know why. I sat up in bed and glanced toward the window. The moon was bright enough for me to see across the snow-covered landscape. I jumped out of bed and softly walked to the window. "What is that?" I muttered to myself as my eyes focused. In the moonlight, I saw footprints. At first I thought they were ours, but the tracks were too far from the cabin. They started just beyond the porch and stretched leading halfway to the woods, then stopped, like whoever made them had just vanished. Maybe it was just a trick of the light. But a deep unease burrowed into me, and I found myself staring at those half-finished footprints for far too long. Shadows could play tricks on your mind sometimes, but something about the sight gnawed at me, a wrongness I couldn't shake. I closed the curtain and went back to bed, convincing myself it was nothing. I fell into an uneasy sleep. The next morning, as I walked into the kitchen, I saw Claire brewing coffee, humming softly, her voice sweet and calming. I tried to act normal, but when I looked out the window, the footprints were still there. I didn't want to ruin the day, so I said nothing. That night, the wind howled and branches from the trees scratched against the windows. I woke again, my heart pounding. I was sure I'd heard something, a faint but deliberate sound of snow under someone's feet. My stomach clenched, but I stayed in bed. I strained my ears, but the sound was gone. Claire stirred beside me, but didn't wake up. Careful not to wake her, I slipped out of bed, grabbed the flashlight I'd left by the nightstand, and crept to the window. The moon was hidden behind clouds, so I shone the flashlight. My breath caught in my throat. New footprints. They started in the same spot as before, halfway between the woods and the cabin. But this time, they didn't stop. They circled the cabin before disappearing back into the woods. Fear clutched at me. I'd seen no one, heard no one. Yet someone or something had been watching us, circling us like prey. My pulse thundered in my ears as I locked every door and every window. I even pushed furniture against the doors. The noise woke Claire and she stirred. "What are you doing?" she asked. "I can't sleep," I said. "You go back to sleep, I'm just staying up a little bit till I'm tired." Claire fell asleep almost instantly. By the 3rd morning, I couldn't hide it from her anymore. She found me standing at the window, pale and trembling, gripping the curtain so tightly my knuckles were white. The fresh tracks were closer now, stopping just feet from the porch. "What's wrong?" Claire asked as she walked closer to the window. Her face turned white when she saw the footprints. "They weren't there yesterday," she said. "I know," my voice barely above a whisper. "I think we need to stay inside today." I made a fire and we curled up on the couch. Claire clung to my side, her usual warmth replaced by a cold, creeping fear. We debated leaving, but the roads were buried under snow, and without chains for the tires, we'd never make it. We were trapped. That night was the worst. I stayed up determined to keep watch, armed with a kitchen knife and a baseball bat I'd found in the storage closet. Claire begged me to sleep, but I couldn't. I sat by the window staring into the dark, listening for anything. A footstep, a knock, a breath. Around midnight there was a knock on the door. I froze, every muscle in my body locking up as Claire gasped from the bed, clutching the blanket to her chest. I motioned for her to stay quiet as I moved to the door, gripping the knife so tightly my hand hurt. The knock came again, much louder this time. My mind raced as I grabbed the kitchen knife from the counter and moved to the door. "Who's there?" I croaked, my voice barely above a whisper. No answer. I pressed my ear to the door. For a moment, there was nothing. Then, very faintly, I heard a low whisper. "Let me in." I staggered back, the knife trembling in my hand. The voice was cold and evil. Claire screamed as the door rattled violently, like someone was trying to break it down. I grabbed her, pulling her away from the door as it splintered. We ran toward the back door, but before we reached it, the handle began to turn. Whoever or whatever it was toying with us. Moving faster than I ever thought possible, I grabbed a chair and jammed it under the handle, praying it would hold. The next minute, the window shattered and glass sprayed across the room. The wind came howling through the opening. From the corner of my eye, I saw a shadow move, then another. "Claire, run!" I screamed over the howling wind, pulling her towards the stairs that led to the loft. We ran the stairs 2 at a time, and just as I slammed the door, the dirty, fat man reached the handle. Claire was shaking and crying. I put my finger over my lips, showing her to be quiet. We stood in front of the door for what seemed like hours. I heard more footsteps coming up the stairs, and before I could react, an axe broke through the door, splintering the lock. The door swung open. One of the 3 men, a short, fat guy who smelt like he hadn't bathed in a month, pushed past me and went straight for Claire. She let out a roaring scream and ran for the stairs. Before she could escape, a man with long, stringy hair and an unshaven face who was standing just outside the door grabbed her by the hair and pulled her to the ground. Claire sobbed while she kicked and screamed. The fat, smelly guy made a run for me. I gripped the knife in one hand and the baseball bat in the other. I knew it wouldn't be enough. Not against them, but I wasn't going to let them hurt Claire. As Stinky reached me, I lifted the bat and connected it with his head. He fell to the ground with a thud. I didn't care whether he was dead or not. I left him lying on the floor and I ran down the stairs towards the kitchen. I caught the long-haired dude just as he threw Claire over his shoulder and carried her out of the back door. With the knife in my hand, I ran towards him and stabbed him in the back over and over. Claire fell into the snow as the man collapsed, the once white snow turning to crimson red. I helped Claire to her feet and held her tight. Through all the tension and commotion, I had forgotten about the 3rd man. Behind me, a door creaked open. Claire let go of me and stood next to me just as the bullet hit her. She fell face down in the snow, blood staining the brilliant white. I screamed, and as I turned around, the second bullet hit me. Everything went black,